Recently I did a video on who I perceive to be one of the most hated characters in 40k, Lucius the Eternal. To which I was met with an absolute barrage of people whinging in the comments, telling me that I couldn't possibly be more wrong, and that the chap I was looking for was Erebus. So for those of you who did have a good whinge, here's your video. We'll catch up on that in a moment. So as mentioned at the beginning of this video, we're going to be discussing why Erebus is so bloody hated by fans of 40k. Contrary to a character like Lucius, who is largely hated for his perceived woeful writing and infinite plot armor, you can find out more about this hot take in a previous video I did, Erebus is hated for just being a massive dickhead. But what you're here for is to understand at least at a high level who Erebus is, and what he did that made people so incredibly salty. Now this won't be a deep dive into his character, but we'll be covering what you need to know. So as for Erebus and who he is, he's a senior Dark Apostle of the Word Bearers, one of the well-known traitor legions, and no surprise there, of course. He was previously the first Chaplain of the Legion before their fall to Chaos. Now one of the things that makes Erebus interesting is that, unlike almost any other Astartes during his time serving the Emperor, he'd actually already willingly become a Chaos fanboy before he even became an Astartes. From there, he worked his way up like the fanatical nutjob he was. For some context here, this guy has whole sections of the Book of Lorgar tattooed across his head as a form of intimidation. Eventually, he would become Lorgar's right-hand man. And once he'd established himself in this position, he began working on corrupting the Word Bearer's Primarch, along with the Death Guard's first captain, Callus Typhon, and finally, the infamous Warhammer 40,000 himself, Horus Heresy. And this is something which helped him live up to his self-appointed title of Hand of Destiny, a reference to his position as the mortal instrument in pulling the strings that would help give the Chaos Gods so much strength in the material realm. Now Erebus was a bit of a dickhead from birth, although it's worth noting that wasn't his name from the beginning. But we'll get to that bit in a sec. Let's call him Cedric for now. The reprehensible nonsense Cedric got up to is very much a nature, not nurture scenario. Even as a kid, he constantly manipulate, deceive and cause absolute chaos, obviously, amongst those around him. And indeed, he got kicks from doing so. He even started, as many psychopaths do, practicing the malice against animals, torturing the cultist desert scorpions. Because he was a little shitbag, Cedric's parents would discipline him, and as part of that, he'd get compared to another child, who was the absolute prodigal son in their village. And this child's name was Erebus. Erebus was highly religious, extremely well educated, and behaved impeccably. Cedric was constantly told that he should work harder, behave better, be like Erebus. Cedric decided, you know what? You're absolutely right. He did indeed need to be more like Erebus. In fact, not only did he need to be more like Erebus, he needed to be Erebus. Cedric, taking his parents' desires into consideration, acted pretty literally on their request. He decided to strangle Erebus with a garrote, copied the child boy's facial tattoos, and with it, decided to take his name too. He then went on to flee the village and decided to work on becoming a priest of the Covenant of Cultists, all under his new name. Whilst he wasn't into the super religious vibe despite becoming a priest, he began to actually appreciate the spiritual insights he was getting from it. Unfortunately, being Warhammer 40k, this does not have the nice happy clappy ending you're hoping for. It was during this time he formally began to crumble, at least knowingly, to the will of the Ruinous Powers. One day, while looking into a mirror which was cracked into 4 parts, he realised in that moment that the gods of the Covenant were in fact the Ruinous Powers, and that the gods of Chaos were the ones guiding him on the path that he had been on all along. Now from here, he just went fully off the rails, becoming a devout servant of Chaos, and when the Covenant of Cultists fell under Lorgar's control, Erebus went into hiding, before re-emerging as an acolyte under the reformed direction the faith was taking under Lorgar's vision. Like many others, he was, from here, turned into a space marine. He had his foot in the door on his plans to become a vessel for the Chaos Gods. At the end of the Great Crusade, Erebus had proceeded to grow, becoming the first chaplain of the Word Bearers Legion. Around this time, like many of his brothers, Lorgar was angry with his father, the Emperor. All had their reasons, but Lorgar was pissed because he and his legion were berated by the Emperor for trying to spread worship of the Emperor across the galaxy. This was the chink in the armour that Erebus had been waiting for. He quickly moved to speak with Lorgar and explained to him, alongside Lorgar's foster father Corferan, that there were other entities in the universe that were ready to welcome his worship, and the worship of any other humans who wanted to join them. From here, Erebus, along with the other arsehole core Farron, proceeded to erect temples of the Dark Gods on every world that they brought into Imperial compliance. And this was decades before the Horus Heresy would even come to fruition. Erebus would begin working on secret dealings with the Lunar Wolves Legion, and in particular their War Master and Primarch, Horus. He sowed the seeds that led to the war between the Imperium and the Interrex, which gave him the opening he needed to steal an archaic artifact from their Hall of Weapons. A blade which was part of Erebus' plans to corrupt the War Master and bring him under the influence of Chaos once and for all. The artifact was handed over to the traitor planetary governor of a planet known as Davin, who would then go on to be corrupted by Nurgle. This was done with the hope that Horus might be wounded by the blade, the result of which would be beyond the capability of his own apothecaries, and would leave them unable to nurture him back to health. And his predictions would be correct. When they realised they were helpless, they handed their care over to Erebus directly, leading to his resurrection using dark chaos rituals within the dark halls of the Serpent Lodge. It was during this resurrection that Horus would have some wet dreams about chaos and visions of a galaxy burning. And these dreams would pin the blame of a future he didn't want directly onto the Emperor. They promised him all the support he needed to rebel, and turned to them bitter and twisted towards his father, and the rest is history. Erebus got stuck in afterwards too, giving Horus a cheeky ear nibble and then whispering ideas into them. Ultimately, he masterminded the Istvan III atrocity, which got the remaining loyalists from the traitor legions absolutely spangled. And then he continued to be at Horus' side during his midlife crisis that led to some shenanigans we're all too familiar with. So when we think of why Erebus is hated, we could go on forever. We have plenty more examples such as the Ruin Storm, which he summoned to split the Imperium into two. He's betrayed even his own traitor brothers without hesitation, sacrificed millions of human captives to summon a bunch of demons, which would go on to assault Imperial forces at the Cadian Gate, and so much more. So really, the reasons for Erebus being hated are so vast that we could probably triple the length of this video and really try to milk that ad revenue, but I think we've said enough. Now personally, I actually prefer to think of him as Good Guy Erebus, a Chad with a massive dong who was incredibly based and played Horus and pals like a fiddle in his role as the real architect of the Horus Heresy. And without him, we wouldn't have the 40K setting we know and love, warts and all. And if nothing else, I'd have less content to make videos about. I'll let you decide if that's another reason to hate him or not. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. The odds are that even if you have, you probably still haven't hit subscribe, so definitely consider doing so and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss out on this kind of shit content in future. And if you'd like other ways to support the channel, check out the affiliate links in the description. You'll be able to find discounts, top quality service, and places that I wholeheartedly trust to deliver you great products. But that's all from me. Thank you very much for coming along. I do appreciate you being here, and I will see you in the next one.